Welcome to Mic'd Up with Jeb Bush in conversation with Terry Duffy.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Terry Duffy. I am the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of the CME Group, which is the largest futures exchange in the United States, and we're a global institution. It's a pleasure to be here for my friend Mike Milken. I don't know if Mike's down here yet, but I always appreciate having the opportunity to be here. First, I get the pleasure of talking with a friend, and it's pretty unusual being in my business what it is when you can sit down in front of a eclectic group of people like this and talk to a friend, and Jeb Bush is a friend. He is a truly decent human being. Was a great governor of Florida, great family man. His son Jeb Jr., I hope, is he still with you here?
I think we kicked him out of the door. He's
Kicked him out?
got to go back to work. He's in San Francisco trying to make a living.
So anyway, great family. Anyway, Governor, let's talk a little bit, and we'll kick it off if we have to, just because of the recent current events with the president, and maybe talk a little bit about the election and some of his recent rhetoric about how we need a good government shutdown and things of that nature.
What did President Trump do?
Right?
So I've had this theory, perhaps because of giving myself self-therapy, if you will, that the better way of dealing with President Trump is to follow his deeds, not his words. Because there are some good deeds. I mean, he's made some good appointments. I think his foreign policy team is first rate. His regulatory agenda seems to be pretty consistent and coherent. The Supreme Court justice choice he made was not rhetorical, it was actual, and it was really good in my opinion. So I've tried to follow my own vice to not watch what he says, but there is a point where what you say in the presidency more than any other job in the world matters. In fact, it does send signals. So you look at the problems in the world, the great threats we face, which are pretty constant, but North Korea being maybe the principal one today, you can't undermine the South Korean-U.S. relationship and expect a good result with North Korea. You can't say that you're going to meet, under certain circumstances, you would meet with the dictator of North Korea and get a good result. Sometimes words do have consequences, and I think the president, his wife has probably given the best advice of anybody that I know, which is that her advice was for him to stop tweeting and take the phone away when she's in Trump Tower and he's in the White House during the week. That someone ought to grab the damn phone and stop allowing him to create this uncertainty, because we have men and women in uniform that are protecting us. We have national security considerations that are riskier. And when I think he thinks that creating uncertainty is good for a negotiating position, but it actually creates more things to negotiate.
Right.
If you're certain, particularly in foreign policy, if you have a certain position and people know it, people know where you stand, your friends know where you are, and they don't, they act in the right way. And your enemies fear you a bit, but they know you're going to act in the right way, and that's what we don't have right now. We have a lot of uncertainty in the world. So I hope that this rash of decisions about a gas tax, which was against what he said in the campaign, or he would talk to North Korea, which he said yesterday, or he this morning apparently said maybe we ought to have a government shutdown in September. You had all this stuff up. This is 24 hours.
Right.
Dang, man. I mean, it's like, chill out.
Let's get away from the president.
Yeah, I got that. That's my therapy for the morning, so I'm good for the day.
Pulling double duty here. I got to interview you, and plus we got to do a little session.
Yes, Dr. Terry.
So, Governor Bush is obviously doing a lot of new things. You've seen him in the news lately with Derek Jeter. Is it Derek Jeter?
Yeah.
Derek Jeter, and they are in the running, and looks like you are going to be the new owner of the Florida Marlins. So tell us what that experience has been like.
I've gone for Micah.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's been phenomenal. There's sports franchises have inherent value that it's hard to appreciate for a guy like you that's been in business and looks at income statements and looks at PowerPoint presentations to kind of project out cash flow, and you take multiples of EBITDA and all that. sports franchises are operating in a different realm. So it's taking a little adjusting for me to fully appreciate it. But given the interest that we have inside of Miami and amongst people that are potential limited partners, I'm really excited about it. It's a great sport. I grew up watching baseball. I can remember. I got to tell you a story about my dad, the greatest man alive. Have you ever heard the expression "You the man, you're the man"? My dad claims that he invented that. He invented that at a Colt 45 game in Houston in the 1960s. As he was on the third base side. Rusty Staub, former Met. Before that, he was an Astro or Colt 45. He hits a home run and he's rounding third base, and my dad claims that he yelled out, "You're the man, Rusty." And that's from that moment on, that term now is part of the sports nomenclature. So it's deeply embedded in family life in our case, and I think it's a sport that has huge potential in Miami. So I'm excited about the community aspects of this. Derek Jeter is a phenomenal guy, person of incredible integrity. What's interesting, you don't meet. I get to meet famous people all the time. And sometimes they don't match up to what their reputation is. Right. A lot of times, Jeter is the exact opposite. He's got this incredible, impeccable reputation that he earned, and in person he is maybe even better. He's humble. He's really smart. He's totally focused on this. He makes. We've had to make some tough decisions that would require little conflict, and he's made them in a way that makes me feel really, really good to be his partner. So we're excited about it.
So when you look at professional sports today, and you're right about you don't look at the bottom line, because it seems like all the potential revenues on the back end, once you sell the team, you hope to sell it for more than you make for it, because you're going to lose probably the time that you own it. At least it's been a history of that.
We don't want to lose money along the way. No, that's not the plan, Terry.
No, I get it, but you look at some
That's
of the
plan
franchises.
C.
But does it not have a salary cap, right? Baseball.
Baseball doesn't have a salary cap, which is what you have to self-impose as an owner. You have to have the discipline in Major League Baseball, I think, and any sport, but because there's ways to get around salary caps apparently in the other sports. You have to have the discipline to identify players the right way, be patient about it, take your time to do it, use data analytics in ways that now are being used. There's no correlation between high salaries and winning.
Right.
It's an interesting. The sport is different maybe in others in that regard. So Derek is going to be in charge of the baseball for all you that are concerned about the Miami Marlins. He's got that part of the job, and he fully appreciates the need to do this in a patient way. So you could lose money along the way if you had it to lose, or if you thought that was okay. Our plan is not to lose money as you go along. It's to create a turnaround situation where you enhance revenue over time and build the team patiently.
Well, it seems to me that growing up playing baseball as a kid, like everybody else did in the United States, it kind of lost its way for a while to other sports. And now, just as little as last year. Now I'm from Chicago. I'm from the South Side. I'm from the South Side, so I wasn't that happy either when the Cubs won. So don't get me wrong.
Don't tell me you didn't put the shirt on.
A little bit. Anyway. It seemed like with the Cubs and the Indians in the World Series, it captured a lot of attention and brought a lot more kids, especially inner city kids, back to the baseball fields.
Yeah, I think every sport has to focus on the fact that millennials are very different. The next generation of people, they're going to make sports viable in the United States, or have a totally different mindset than people our age. So that is an effort that Major League Baseball has to focus on. What they have that's really interesting is perhaps the best digital media package of any sport. And it's valued, it's growing fast. So people, you can watch, the way a lot of people consume their information, that you can watch it in 30-second increments. And it's a high-margin business and seems to be really effective. So the two things that I think will be helpful for baseball is to expand beyond the borders of the United States and to exploit this digital branding that they're pretty good at.
And I mean, the expansion of the valuations of professional sports teams has just gone through the roof. When I was talking with you just a couple months back, we were playing golf and we were talking about the Marlins, and you told me what thought the potential valuation of his team was. It was staggering. I mean, I know it's a public number that's been
It's
out there.
about the same multiple as the CME. Close enough. So
Not quite.
something you could appreciate.
No, but anyway, we wish you nothing but the best, and hopefully that goes through.
Yeah, we'll see pretty soon.
So let's go a little bit back to politics for a second. You know, we've had 100 days. People like to talk about the administration and Congress, because Congress is a big part of this. You know, yesterday I was watching Secretary Ross on a Bloomberg interview, and he's just a delightful man to listen to, Wilbur Ross. And he said that Congress has gotten so perverse that he came out of committee 100% to go forward with becoming Commerce Secretary. And then he still had to wait 2 months for a confirmation process, of which he got 75 votes in the United States Senate. So that puts him and everybody else in the situation administration way behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
So forget about the administration. Let's talk about how Congress is working and what do you see the next.
Well, it's not just Congress. It's Washington is just dysfunctional in its process. So to appoint people, you have to go through a vetting process that's more complicated than it was 4 years ago, which was more complicated than it was 10 years ago, which was more complicated than when my dad or President Reagan was president. The cost of this for people to serve is extraordinary. You have to put aside everything that it's just really hard to find people. Then you got to vet them. Then you go through the congressional process, and the Democrats have held up a lot of the appointments because they can, I guess. I mean, there's no particular reason why it would take 60 days for someone who went through committee to be appointed. But then you get into the second and third levels, which is really the problem. The Trump administration has had a hard time putting a team on the field. Yep. So we have high expectations when a new president comes in, and yet the percentage of appointees that have been nominated is low. That's his doing, I guess, to some extent. And then the percentage that have been confirmed is really low, much lower than Obama, which was lower than my brother, which was lower than Clinton, which was lower than my dad. And that's almost everything that you can look at in Washington in terms of its process, how it works, is the same thing. Everything has slowed down. Everything is gridlocked. Everything costs more. Everything works less. And the thing that I think Donald Trump said that I don't have a long list of things that I could give you that I thought he said in the campaign that I admired. The thing, though, that I really thought was great was draining the swamp. The swamp needs to be drained. We're operating, it's like Hubert Humphrey and Everett Dirksen, yeah, or like on the Senate. We're operating in the mid-20th century in a dynamic, crazy 21st century world. And our government is one of the institutions we used to rely on to work. Now it doesn't work, and it's also huge. It's big. It's complicated. It's extraordinarily expensive. And so I hope he pursues with a vengeance this agenda to transform how it works. There should be lobbying reform. We should have term limits. There should be a balanced budget amendment. We should shrink the beast. We should eliminate politicians leaving the job and moving. You want me to eliminate politicians in general? No. Not a bad idea, but if you serve, you should serve. You should go back home, right? Instead of serving, crossing the street, and end up being a high-powered lobbyist. All those things, I think, would give people some confidence that the system can work for everybody, not just for those that have their snouts, in the front of the trough.
You bring up an interesting point because there is nobody there. I was just at the State Department and the Treasury, and if you go down a floor or two from the political appointees, there's nobody there yet. So these people that are in business trying to do different types of transactions, now that we spend $2 trillion a year regulating ourselves in all these different businesses, there's no one there to speak to about how you're going to go forward. So if you have a deal pending in front of the Department of Justice, there's not a whole lot of folks there to give you the authority to go forward.
Another element of the swamp draining that would be helpful is career civil service reform. In Florida, a state government worker that's incompetent can be fired. Now, I know that's a really radical idea that you can fire people for not doing their job. But what we found was we shrunk the workforce, not because it was punitive, but we didn't need as many workers. But I think the workforce was improved and enhanced. In Washington, the lifetime protections are extraordinary. I mean, maybe they're like they are in California, I don't know, but in it is vastly different in Florida than it is in Washington, D.C. So not only does President Trump have the challenge of hiring people, he has a bureaucracy that in almost every one of these departments is openly defiant in whatever his agenda is. And that's an added burden that is not necessary. You could shrink the government workforce by a sizable margin. It may mean that suburban Maryland and Virginia loses some of its economic progress. It may mean that Washington is no longer the financial capital of the United States. Right. But so be it. There's a lot of other places, Chicago and Miami and other places that struggle, but we managed to get through. Maybe not so much Chicago, but we managed to get through. And Washington needs to live by the rules that they create, and they haven't done. Basically they're exempt from their own systems that they've created that impose real problems on us.
Let's stay with the example of Florida and talk about your tenure as governor. And you cut taxes every year while you were governor.
Yeah.
And I think you did it you had economic growth 7 out of the 8 years that you were governor of Florida. So now we have tax cut proposals on the board. How do you relate those to what you were able to achieve in the state of Florida in the growth?
In Florida, we didn't have an income tax to cut. Just in case anybody's interested in that subject, you're welcome. Y'all are welcome to come. So we didn't, the Washington's focus needs to be on corporate and personal income tax because that's the primary place that you can jumpstart economic growth. And simplifying the code has an additional important power. If you want to drain the swamp, take away the lobbyists and accountants and consultants that basically translate how Washington works to everybody else. If you simplified the code, lowered rates, eliminated all of the deductions that exist, you would take power away from Washington. So there's an added benefit there. So our tax reform was different in that it was simpler to begin with. But my attitude was government should grow within its means, and if we established what the priorities were, personal income growth would be the maximum that government spending would grow. If we generated more income for government, that should go back to people, and that's basically how we applied it. So we ended up with 8 years of tax cuts, $18 billion total, and the economy grew and government grew. Government wasn't like people, they didn't appreciate me too much in Tallahassee as governor, the people that lived there as much as maybe other parts of the state, but Tallahassee's unemployment rate was like 2%. They adjusted quite well. Washington would adjust as well. The challenge will be, everybody in this room probably has a tax cut they think is important or a tax benefit they think is important. In California, you might think that the world will come to an end if you eliminate the deduction for local and state taxes. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, we're going to cut services here. It's not fair. Well, the simple fact, that's $1 trillion of set-off. If you want to lower rates, there has to be set-offs of similar size. And the world doesn't come to an end with these things. We all adjust. The energy sector is a great place to talk about how the tax code works. There's been an oil depletion allowance forever. And people in the oil and gas sector, I think, will have a heart attack when I say this, but why should they have a special tax treatment for a process now that is, because of technology, is pretty certain when you drill now? The idea of a dry hole doesn't exist to the same extent it did. So eliminate those deductions and lower rates, eliminate all of the deductions for the solar and wind, and don't pick winners and losers. Take power away from the bean counters in Washington and let the markets work. They'll work far faster, far better, far more efficiently than smart people from up above deciding what energy source we're going to use.
So let's talk about the tax, not the taxes so much, but about who it affects, which are the people. You've been very outspoken through your career about the nation's gap in skills and the challenges that automation brings to the job market. Can you tell us a little bit more about these trends and what you're seeing of the evolution of the workforce?
I'm normally very optimistic because we're Americans and we just kind of figure we do it chaotically, and it looks from abroad they must think, God, these people are crazy, they don't know what they're doing. But the interaction of all of us in a chaotic way normally yields a really damn good result. In this particular case, I'm worried that all of this disruptive innovation is different than previous great technological changes. I'm deeply troubled by this because I think people are complacent with the idea that innovation brings greater productivity, brings greater opportunities, all is well. Well, the simple fact is This innovation requires critical thinking skills that aren't being delivered for the next generation or for adults that are trying to change to another job. And there are people born in public hospitals in the United States today that, unless we alter their course with a much more robust 21st century education, will never get a job at all. That's my fear. And the social strains that come from that ought to be the fear of everybody in this room. And I don't think it is yet. I think people are, they think denial is a river in Africa. They're in complete denial. It's just like, and I would hope that you begin to see a social movement to say, it's not appropriate, it's not fair, this is a social justice issue to assure that every child is college and or career ready by the time they are a senior in high school, that they get a piece of paper that is relevant for what the future holds for them, because the future that holds for them something dramatically different than what it did for you and I. Yep. And this is maybe the best example of institutions in our society that are broken, that need to be fixed. Healthcare would be one, how we regulate, our tax code, all these things need to be fixed so that we embrace the future in a way that will lead the world. If we don't do it, we're going to be mired in you can see the beginning of social disarray. I mean, the election was an example of that in some ways, and we'll see more of it. We'll see a divided country, not based on, this is not a question of a wall or tariffs against China. Those were ways to prey on people's fears that are legitimate. The answer to this is to empower people, each person, so that they can have the right and the desire to earned success. The world we're moving towards right now, I'm not sure we're there.
Right. Well, since you brought up the wall, let's talk about it. Clearly, there's a great deal of...
We have one, by the way, in many places. I don't know if you've been to the border. There's a wall. But
the controversy around immigration. Tell us your thoughts on the balance that we need to have as it relates to not only protecting the borders, but at the same time treating people, humanitarily in a decent way.
I don't know if you can still see the scar on my forehead on this subject in the campaign. Look, America is at its best when we have a set of shared values, which are eroding as well, where we embrace those values and we say, it doesn't matter where you came from, what the color of your skin is, or whether you got a Z at the end of your name, or it doesn't matter. Your accent, none of that stuff matters. It's how you go about your life as an American, what contribution you can make. And if you're successful, we celebrate your success. And if you're hurting, we help you temporarily so you get back on your feet. That's the America at its best. The immigration issue is a place where our system is broken as well. We have a legal immigration system that is unique to the world and is not what we need to have. We need to have an economically driven immigration system where the people that come, we choose, and where the contract is, you embrace American values and pursue your dreams as you see fit, and you're as American as someone that came in the Mayflower. Restoring that contract is what needs to happen. Today, we have family reunification driving legal immigration. 85% of all legal immigrants come because we have the broadest definition of family in the world. We're the only country that has spouse, minor children, adult siblings, and adult parents, so that you can petition, and it's called chain migration, and the net effect is that it crowds out all other forms of immigration. So number one, let's focus on the things that could be fixed, which is our legal immigration system. Make sure that the systems are in place to enforce the law so people don't believe that law enforcement is selective. Building a wall is symbolic. It's not going to solve the problem at all. In fact, I think it's much more divisive than is necessary here. Build consensus on how you enforce the laws of the land, and get on with it, man. I mean, this is a huge catalyst for high sustained economic growth. Immigrants, when we create the right system, immigrants add enormous value. And my experience in the campaign was disappointing because a lot of my fellow conservatives lost their appreciation of I think, this very important fact, which is America is a bottom-up country. When people come here and pursue their dreams and they're allowed to do it, it creates more possibilities, more prosperity, more benefits to more people than any government program. That's what a conservative believes, and we've lost our confidence in that very notion when you say, let's build walls, let's send these harsh signals to people that are law-abiding. If you're look, I don't need to get into this. You guys understand it. It's more than one thing. It needs to be fixed. If it's fixed, it'll help us sustain economic growth, which will create income, more income for people, which will lessen people's fears about the future and raise their hopes, which gets us back into the game of being Americans again. We don't do pessimism really well as a country, best I can tell. I mean, moping around is not an American value that yields a good result. We're much better when we don't get in line and don't get told what to do, when we just go do it. And we're losing that spirit right now, and immigration's part of it. It's not a bad thing. It's actually done right. It's an enormously powerful American advantage that no other country has.
So, Governor, I know our time's getting a little bit short here, but let me ask you a quick question about geopolitical issues. You've written a lot about the aggression in the Middle East and your concern with the Iranians and others over there. Can you maybe just give us a couple thought processes on that?
Well, look, this is where I think consistency, having a doctrine, having a worldview that's consistent is important. I think President Obama, I don't ascribe bad motives for his negotiating as it relates to Iran or Cuba or how he dealt with the Middle East, but I think it created more insecurity than security. When you unilaterally concede things to people who are despots, who control by terror or by sheer brute force, they don't go quietly in the night. This notion that somehow you make unilateral concessions and expect a good result is a bad policy. And I hope President Trump focuses on that first and foremost, that we should stand for certain things, we should be consistent in how we apply them, we should be, we can't be naive about how people react to the kinds of the weakness that we project. But we got to be consistent about it. And I think there are some positive steps, I think, of realigning the United States security influence back to the Sunni Arab world, which I think is appropriate. But there needs to be more consistency. And I think this is partially just getting the team on the field and through trial and error building it up. I'm more optimistic because of who he has appointed. It gives me some confidence that he has really credible people, competent people as National Security Advisor, the Defense Secretary, Secretary of State, and as he builds that team out, I think the Trump administration could be really positive as it relates to the Middle East. And it's clear the guy doesn't like ISIS. I'm on his team for that. I mean, he makes that clear. That's one place where he's been pretty consistent, and so should he. Right. But the threat of terror goes beyond ISIS. It goes to Al-Qaeda and any other of the Islamic terrorist organizations, and we have to. This is a long-haul deal. You can't be America first, America withdrawn, America, only worried about our interest and deal with this issue. We have to re-engage with the rest of the world and lead. And I get a sense that that's where he's moving.
Yep. Well, as we get ready to conclude, you and I have a mutual friend in Speaker Boehner, and he has a great saying about...
you can't say all the sayings he says, unless we're going to...
He likes to call people a great American. You raised a great American earlier on in your comments, and that would be your father.
Yeah.
Can you maybe just give the folks here a little how your dad is doing? And
Well, he's out of the hospital again. He's got a permanent location in Memorial Hospital, it appears. It's a nice room there. He goes in and out. He has kind of a bronchial issue that flares up, and when it does, he gets pneumonia, goes to the hospital. They get him back better, and he leaves. So he's out of the hospital. He's heading up to Maine with my mom mid-May, and he always seems to be healthier there. He's an extraordinary guy. The fun part of his last years of his life is to see how people that may have been didn't hold him in as high regard as they do now speak about him now. It's nice. It's kind of history has a way of being kind to people who are decent, honorable, courageous, patriotic, intelligent. My dad was the youngest Navy pilot in World War II history. People forget, people don't know these things. He's an extraordinary man, and it's really heartwarming as a son who loves him more than I could ever describe to you all, to see how left or right, it doesn't matter anymore, people love the guy.
Yes.
And it's kind of cool.
And your mom, how's she doing? Is she keeping Dad limited?
Yeah. My mom, yeah, she's. All I can tell you is, I was governor and we dealt with the child welfare system a lot because we had problems, and we had this. I don't know if you all have the hotline in California and other places. My mom is fortunate that there was no child abuse hotline when I was growing up.
And she's keeping Dad down to one.
She's
one a
keeping
day
all
or
of us
two a
in
day.
line still. She kind of runs the show. We are a matriarchal family beyond belief.
Well, you're a wonderful family. So this is going to conclude this session, but let's give a really nice round of applause to a really great American, Governor Jeb Bush.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, sir. Good job, sir.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.